Well, thank you very much for that introduction. And that was a wonderful presentation, Jeffrey. You made one comment there about CEOs knowing more than they, or acting as if they know more than they think they do. And having been a CEO, I'm going to take that to heart. And I'm going to make just some brief, a few brief comments so that we can get to the question and answer period and also onto our discussion. First, just a little background about myself. After being in academia and having a not-for-profit research and educational institution, I founded a company. And for 30 years, I ran that company. It was in international economic development. And much of the work was in the developing world and was done for international banks and for governments. And I just want to read something I wrote in 1977, which was the sort of the founding, one of the founding values of the firm. And I wrote, there is little point to short-term fixes based on the imposition of technologies disruptive of local environments, solutions which use up the capital of ecosystems rather than living on the interest, leave people more impoverished over a long space of time. And in the ensuing 30-plus years, we've seen just the increased use of resources, and we've seen everything sliding downhill. And that's what's brought us all here today, in fact, is the criticalness of the situation. As a consulting firm, ARD was committed to problem solutions that were decentralized whenever possible. And I realize here I'm stating some of the all accepted values of the sustainability movement. But we tried to make all stakeholders part of the process from the beginning. And we tried to involve the collaboration of business and education and government. Again, I realize those are core principles of sustainability. These were things that I've been involved in and working on very consciously since the late 70s. And how did that play out in terms of what the firm did? Well, we chose to get involved in projects and provide services that we felt were based in improving the sustainability of systems, of products, of whatever we were involved in. And we worked on renewable energy systems and technologies. We improved the sustainable practices and the reuse of renewable resources such as forestry and fisheries and land use. We worked on improved farming practices based on sustainable principles. And all the design and feasibility studies that we did were always based in the sustainability perspective. Let me give you just an example of what might be called a sustainable management principle that we used, and that was to always try to involve local stakeholders in the discussions, the design and decisions on approaches and solutions to problems. And we found that this improved the quality and the solution of whatever we were working on, and we also got buy-in for the execution of what we were doing. Let me just tell a story from a project. In the late 1980s, we were working in Lesotho in southern Africa, and the charge we had was to develop an improved stove for use in rural communities. And as many of you may know, in that part of Africa, dung is used as a fuel, and it's obviously environmentally horrible, but nevertheless, it's the way people cook. So we had a laboratory. We were doing a number of things. There's solar power and so forth, but on this one part of the project, we had a laboratory, and we were testing a variety of designs of stoves. And in line with our philosophy, we got local stakeholders involved, and we got a whole number of women from rural communities in and began to have them work with us in the lab on the designs and on the testing. And in that process, one of the local women came up with a design that was made totally with local materials and was not something that we had thought about. It wasn't quite as efficient as the designs that we had brought in from the outside, but it had the advantage of being very much more acceptable. And we actually chose that design to then put forth and use around the country, and it began to be accepted and used. So here's an example, very specific example, in terms of creation of a technology or a design. We're using the input from local stakeholders was incredibly effective. So I know we've talked about that. People have mentioned that here today, but I just wanted to give an example of that actually in use. Um, let me talk about sort of the challenges that I see, and also the opportunities. I want to focus on the developing world because that's where my background is. Again, I'm going to say something here that probably everybody knows, but I think it bears repeating because it frames the question and the problem. We've got 1 billion or so people in the world that are at very, very subsistence levels and subsistence economies, and another couple of billion that are beginning to move out of that are beginning to enter into a market economy to have a little bit of disposable income where they can buy things. And if you look at the current level of resource use, well, obviously, these people, if that goes forward, everything's going to collapse. Things are somewhat collapsing now, but it will really collapse. But yet, we can't say that they can't grow, that they can't have growth in their economies. It's been talked about all day today. So the question is, how do we make that growth happen and allow the growth to happen without the catastrophe occurring? There's 3 ways that can happen. Reduce population, so there's not as many people in the world. Yes, that might happen with the correct political and other support systems, but that's not sufficient. We can share more. That really comes to the question of values. We can share more. But there's also a problem there. Some people say we're not going to get the developed world to give up a lot of its resource use in order for these 3 billion people to have part of it. The other and third one is, of course, technology. Technology that substitutes, technology that improves the efficiency of use of both renewables as well as non-renewables. I want to frame this in this way because I think that business has to really look at how it can affect one of those 3 responses or 2 of them. And I think 2, certainly the sharing and the improvement in technology are the 2 key ways. There's obviously going to be a real increased investment opportunity over the next 20 years in the developing world because of these people that are coming into the market economy. And estimates are that the world economy will need to grow from 5 to 10 times what it is now as these people begin to experience higher standard of living. Obviously, I don't need to go into the details of what that really means. But as business expands in the developing countries, the challenge of carrying out this expansion with sustainable principles, it is and it will be huge. But there are some opportunities. We know that many of the production systems in the developing world are in pre-industrial conditions, and this actually presents a situation where some leapfrogging can occur. You can find, for example, in agricultural systems that the opportunity may be there for systems to bypass the high fossil fuel use systems that we have created and jump into a system of production that does not use the fossil fuels and carbon-based kind of system that we've been using. And let me just give some examples there. The use of zero tillage, integrated pest management, alternative energy systems, small farmer reforestation. These are just a few examples. There's a whole series of things that can be packaged, and there's probably new things that can be introduced. Great opportunities in the energy area. Use of wind, solar, forms of biofuel. These are all areas where companies going into the developing world can do so and take part in this expanded market opportunity and yet do it with sustainable principles. And as Jeffrey mentioned, or other people have mentioned, China has really jumped on this. And unless we do something about it, I don't think it's too late, but unless we do something, we're going to fall by the wayside in this opportunity. Also in